In just a few weeks, the World Cup will kick off, probably. And I have to admit, I'm not really psyched for it. I mean, I wish I was, but given the current state of the world and the explicit role of the United States in the current state of the world, like a lot of people, Tom and I have got a lot of feelings.
We've shared some of those feelings on other episodes. And we've also said that we want to give U.S. fans, including ourselves, stuff to celebrate this summer. Like, for example, the incredible soccer history in our host cities.
A lot of people coming to the U.S. for the tournament think they're coming to a country that is still new to the sport. We don't understand it, we call it by the wrong name, and our national highlights were Pelé and Messi playing here at the ends of their careers.
A lot of people born and raised here think that too. And we've tried since we started this podcast last summer to show how wrong that is. To make the case that 150 years of immigrants have made us a soccer nation.
Part of that was an episode we put out last fall of what we called a starting 11 of U.S. Soccertowns, sketches of cities with a long and interesting history of the game.
A few of those soccer towns are host cities this summer, so we thought it might be cool to re-air some of those sketches as individual mini episodes. If you're visiting one, you can take a quick hit of history before you go.
And even if you're a native, there's a lot of stuff you might not know. And we're going to kick off with Atlanta, which will host matches from the group stage through a semifinal. Atlanta has become one of the country's top soccer towns, with Atlanta United establishing itself as a top MLS club and U.S. Soccer making its new home in a sprawling complex outside the city.
We checked in with our friend Patrick Sullivan, an expert in Atlanta soccer history, who helped us get our feet on the ground a bit as the city prepares for the tournament. And one of the first things he pointed out is that Atlanta is no stranger to big events. The '96 Olympics may be beyond the memory of a lot of Atlantans today, but they've hosted Super Bowls, SEC championship games.
And they've got a stadium that was built with soccer in mind. Mercedes-Benz Stadium is home to Atlanta United as well as the Atlanta Falcons. Owner Arthur Blank doesn't need to rip out almost 2,000 seats to widen the field for World Cup games like the losers and perverts who own the Jets and Giants are doing at MetLife Stadium.
Going after the Jets is fine, but now my Giants? Come on, Kirk.
Steve Tisch, call your lawyer.
Arthur Blank is a big soccer guy. The new U.S. Soccer National Training Center being built in Fayette County has his name on it. The temporary U.S. Soccer Federation HQ is located nearby. That's where you can find our good friend Matt Nelson producing great stuff for U.S. Soccer. So you'd think the area would be fired up for the tournament.
It's a big soccer city with a history that, as we'll hear in a few minutes, goes back to the late 19th century. And yet, hotel reservations have been soft, and FIFA recently gave back a significant number of rooms it was holding. At Atlanta's largest hotel, the Marriott Marquis, FIFA had blocked about 400 to 500 rooms, gave them all back. FIFA says that's just what happens at every tournament, but it also dropped 2,000 of its 10,000 hotel reservations in Philadelphia, according to the Philadelphia Inquirer. And similar reports have come out of other World Cup host cities, including Mexico City, Vancouver, and Boston. There are whispers that FIFA cut its World Cup operating budget by more than $100 million, which may be knock-on effects of world events that we'll circle back to.
Atlanta hotels remain optimistic that they'll sell out, but restaurants and bars in Atlanta, especially ones outside the downtown, in neighborhoods like DeKalb and Buckhead, are wondering if this summer will be the economic engine that was promised.
Remember, back when the U.S. was picked as co-host with Mexico and Canada, the expectations were very different. When the three countries bid for the tournament, they had an estimated average ticket price for the final of $1,400. When they actually went on sale, the cheapest ticket was almost $4,200.
For comparison, that's 7 times the cost of the cheapest ticket for the final in Qatar 4 years ago, and more than 40 times what it cost to watch the final of the 2024 Euros in Germany.
Back in 2018, people also didn't realize that FIFA would build its own ticketing platform and make everyone use it, and then take a 30% fee on every single sale and resale. And, thanks to the expanded field and FIFA scheduling, Czechia and the Democratic Republic of Congo didn't know they were going to Atlanta until March 31st. So a lot of fans and football federations are now scrambling to buy plane tickets and make travel arrangements during the stupidest war in U.S. history, which is saying something, which has jacked up the price of oil, raising prices on pretty much everything, and creating new security risks all over the world on top of all of the other completely unnecessary and avoidable problems the Trump administration has caused.
Which are impacting most of the countries who are playing group games in Atlanta. Spain, part of NATO, won't help us commit more crimes? Very awkward. Plus, if an ICE agent in Atlanta hears Spanish, they don't know from the Castilian accent, do they?
Saudi Arabia once bragged they had Jared Kushner in their pocket. They seem to have the whole family. Should be fine, but remember, ICE are literally the worst trained group of least qualified people in federal law enforcement. Very possible Saudi soccer fans could be confused for Iranian terror cells or Mexicans.
Morocco? Again, ICE has questions.
DR Congo? Big questions.
Czechia and Uzbekistan?
ICE doesn't know what you are, definitely can't spell you. If you're white, you're probably fine. Speaking of which, South Africa will also play a group game in Atlanta.
Which should be, it is, exciting because one of the legends of South African soccer, Kaiser Moteng, played for the Atlanta Chiefs in the old NASL. You'll hear about him in the segment that's coming up.
And maybe the South African side will get support from the thousands of South African-born immigrants who live in Georgia, though probably not from the hundreds of Afrikaners who have come through Atlanta since last year as recruited refugees.
Not sure they're Bafana Bafana fans. What about Haiti? Playing Morocco on June 24th. Currently on a no-entry list. Barred from the United States. Players can come, fans can't, even if they bought tickets.
And Cape Verde, making its first World Cup appearance ever?
While Italy and Denmark stay home? Hilarious.
Anyway, Cape Verde is on a new U.S. visa bond list. Before they can come to Atlanta, Cape Verdans have to apply for and pay a $15,000 bond for a tourist visa. FIFA is trying to convince the Trump administration to waive that requirement for players, executives from the Soccer Federation, coaches, support staff, sponsors, families of all those people, etc., because that would be a huge pain in the ass that would also impact World Cup participants Algeria, Senegal, Ivory Coast, and Tunisia. Perhaps Gianni Infantino can whip up a shiny golden trophy for most powerful carve-out of racist visa policy.
Down in Atlanta, these uncertainties, just weeks before the start of the tournament, after years of planning, are a burden. The city of Decatur, just east of Atlanta, is having a 34-day watch fest with watch parties and live music. Big Boys opening, the Indigo Girls closing. Sounds amazing. Every local restaurant and bar will be airing matches, as will a big screen out in Decatur Square. It will hopefully probably be packed and awesome. But those are the kinds of events that, in a functional World Cup, would be magnets for tourists from around the world, mingling with locals. I mean, this is what I've experienced, right? Sharing songs and banter and flag waving is what we've done at previous World Cups. The global melting pot of soccer.
If you are going to Atlanta, you can get to Decatur by taking MARTA, not the Brazilian legend, but the Metropolitan Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority. There's even a Decatur station, and if you're lost, a MARTA transit ambassador will probably be around to help you. You'll recognize them because they'll be wearing shirts that look like soccer jerseys with the MARTA logo on the front and a graphic of the whole rail map on the back. Doug Roberson, the longtime Atlanta Journal-Constitution soccer writer, recently called them the coolest thing MARTA has ever produced. Roberson made the claim on his personal Substack, Soccer with Doug, because he was let go by the Journal-Constitution in March.
That's right. Atlanta's main newspaper cut its top soccer writer just a few months before hosting soccer's biggest event. Not a shock in our increasingly hollowed-out media landscape, but jarring nonetheless. Again, that's Soccer with Doug. We'll have a link in the show notes.
By the way, Doug is right. Those MARTA ambassador shirts are amazing, and MARTA gives Atlanta a pretty good edge as a host city, theoretically. Atlanta will run the trains more frequently with backup buses ready for emergencies. Patrick Sullivan recalled that Marta has been free during other large events, so that would obviously help the flow of people. No word on that yet. Either way, parking around Mercedes-Benz is pretty awful, so take the train if you can, and maybe they'll let you buy a shirt.
Let's say one more thing about Atlanta, which will apply to all of the host cities to some extent. We are a diverse country, but Atlanta is a particularly diverse city. It's a majority-minority city where non-white racial groups make up over 60% of the population.
That diversity is represented in the fan groups that support Atlanta United. It's reflected in the crowds that show up for games. And yet, when the U.S. national team went to Atlanta to play its 2 final friendlies before team selection, even though Atlanta United season ticket holders were given free tickets to the Belgium game, the crowd was predominantly white.
Which is not exactly a new phenomenon for U.S. national team games, for men or women. Historically, a lot of that was due to the teams being predominantly white, ripples of the suburban soccer boom. The faces on the field didn't represent a large cross-section of the country.
But even now, with a U.S. national team that is as diverse as any in history, they don't seem to connect. Coach Mauricio Pochettino has complained a few times about how the U.S. has no soccer history or culture, and no one here cares about the game the way they do in other parts of the world. But maybe part of the problem is not the color of the faces, it's the story this team tells, or doesn't tell.
A couple of months after Pochettino took over the program, Christian Pulisic celebrated a goal against Jamaica with the now notorious Trump dance. He claimed it wasn't political, just fun, but a lot of fans didn't see the fun in it. And Pochettino had no public comment.
But when Tim Weah recently noted that high ticket prices are going to prevent real fans from attending the World Cup, that, quote, football should still be enjoyed by everyone, unquote, which is about as blandly obvious a statement as one can make, Pochettino said, quote, I think players need to talk on the pitch, playing football, not outside of the pitch. It is not his duty to evaluate the price of the ticket. We are not politicians. We are sport people that only we can talk about our job.
Tell that to Tim's dad, the former Ballon d'Or winner and former president of Liberia.
Or tell it to Steve Kerr or LeBron James or Megan Rapinoe or other successful athletes and coaches who got more popular when they used their platforms to advocate for equity and human rights. I know the U.S. national team represents a big, diverse nation that includes some people who don't care about equity and human rights. And they get to hear plenty from Carly Lloyd, Alexi Lawless, and the idiot who kicks for the Kansas City Chiefs. But the majority of the country agrees with Tim Weah. And maybe they'd be more interested in him and this U.S. team. Maybe they'd show up to the games if they heard more stuff they agree with.
But Pochettino is right about this. Their primary job is to play soccer and win games. That was France's job in 1998 when they leaned into their rainbow team, the Black Blanc Bleu, and were explicit about what it represented in the history of the country. After that World Cup, Jerry Longman wrote in the Times, quote, as the French players, black and white, natives and immigrants, celebrated a victory symbolizing France's ethnic diversity, U.S. soccer officials should have gotten the message that America will never reach soccer's upper reaches until it creates an interest in the game beyond the nation's affluent suburbs, end quote.
Germany's win in 2014 was also a triumph of immigration and multiculturalism that was text, not subtext. Das Reboot rallied most of that country. It may have also helped spark an anti-immigrant backlash, the one step forward, 2 steps back that we saw here when we dared to elect a black president. But the German team represented the vision of a new, better Germany. What does the 2026 U.S. team represent? Really, I'm asking.
I mean, it's so hard to know, right? It's not like the team doesn't have plenty of likable guys with good stories to tell. They're just not telling them, at least not in the way that's reaching a broader U.S. fan base.
Or even, based on the people in the seats recently, a broader Atlanta one. There, brought it back around. Because Atlanta is one of our great soccer cities. And it's great that they're hosting the World Cup.
We hope the hotels and restaurants, streets and stands are packed this summer.
Because in a lot of ways, as Atlanta goes, so goes U.S. soccer. So that's why we decided to kick off this recap of our Soccertown history hits in the Dirty South. We hope Mauricio Pochettino takes some time to listen to it so he can start to understand the long soccer history of the country he has the privilege of coaching.
This is an American game.
U.S. Soccer has just moved to Atlanta, Georgia, and Atlanta United are still a young MLS club, but the global game is certainly not new to the New South. Don't let the synthetic turf in Mercedes-Benz Stadium fool you. Soccer in Atlanta has deep roots, and we are happy to have them going box to box at number 8.
And few know more about it than our friend, Patrick Sullivan, an Atlanta native and fellow soccer obsessive. Patrick was kind enough to share some of his New South soccer scholarship with us.
All the way back in the 1870s, as streetcar tracks were being laid all around metro Atlanta, the city decided that in order to operate a streetcar franchise, you had to make improvements to the line, pave the roads.
The Atlanta Roads Commissioner, a guy named William Venable, saw that there would be a huge market for stone and, with his brother, bought rock quarries, including Stone Mountain, Georgia.
Some of you may be ahead of some deeply problematic elements of this history, namely that the Venable brothers were white supremacists who helped bring back the Ku Klux Klan, encouraged cross burnings on Stone Mountain, and would later organize the carving of a Confederate memorial on the rock face. This is soccer history, but again, let's not erase the context.
We won't. So the Venable brothers needed workers for their quarries and for even more profitable cutting of paving blocks. So immigration agents went to Scotland, particularly Aberdeen, a quarry town, which was known for its stone cutters. The Scots are usual soccer suspects. Most of the immigrants settled in Lithonia, which means city town of stone, in eastern DeKalb County, to mine that granite. So these were our mill guys of the Northeast, our timber and mining camp guys of the Pacific Northwest, hard-working laborers who brought games with them for recreation.
Welsh paving block cutters started coming in the 1890s and early 20th century, joining the Scots in the mines and on the soccer fields. The first organized leagues can be traced to 1906 in a different bit of problematic history. At the start of the new century, Jewish and Catholic immigrants were starting to make their way to the northeast part of the state. Georgian civic leaders wanted to dilute the influence of these undesirable arrivals. So in 1905, a Scottish immigration agent was sent to Aberdeen and came back with 500 or 600 white Protestants, many of whom settled in Atlanta. They connected with the existing Scottish community in DeKalb and said, hey, let's play against each other.
The first documented game that Sullivan can find is a 2-2 draw between Atlanta and Lithonia on Christmas Day, 1907. In the fall of '08, Lithonia and Atlanta organized a 2-team league, with the league office located above the Spalding and Brothers sporting goods stores on Broad Street in downtown Atlanta.
Hello again, Bullets Cahill.
It was the first branch office in the Southeast and solidified Atlanta as a key early soccer town.
Now, that league collapsed pretty quickly when a slowdown in the quarries forced a lot of workers to move away, but it was reformed in 1911 with more teams. Now, the league also knew that it needed to expand the player pool to Americanize the game, so they pushed to get Marist and Georgia Tech students to play as well.
In 1912, a team of Atlanta All-Stars traveled to Chattanooga to play a game on George Washington's birthday, the first known inner-city match in the Southeast. But in 1913, an Atlanta team traveled to Birmingham, Alabama, which had its own history of coal mining and industrial mills, and had started its own league in the late 1890s. Birmingham smacked Atlanta 4-0, and the Atlanta soccer bosses decided they needed to get more serious about the game.
A new 4-team Georgia State League was created, with Atlanta and Lithonia taking 2 slots. Stone Mountain was the 3rd team, and the 4th was sponsored by Foote and Davies, the biggest book printer in Atlanta, whose apprentices included John and Tom Harland, who'd grown up playing in Northern Ireland. The league champ would get a trophy provided by Spalding. World War I saw many of the Atlanta area players returning to England or going up to Canada to join up and fight, and that adult league wilted.
But after the war, John Harlan, who now had his own printing company, helped restart league soccer in Atlanta. Women started playing as well in the 1920s. These were intramural teams, not varsity, but Girls High had a team by 1925. In colleges like Spelman in Atlanta and Wesleyan in Macon, Georgia, were also playing soccer in phys ed class.
The Great Depression, as we've discussed before, knocked most of that back. As construction slowed and the demand for granite fell, the mines closed, along with the railways that serviced them. The company teams and leagues shut down as well.
And while there were doubtless still pockets of soccer around Atlanta in the Dark Ages, the game wouldn't return in any real way until the Atlanta Chiefs arrived in 1967.
They played in the NPSL, the National Professional Soccer League, and were the brainchild of Dick Cecil, vice president of the Atlanta Braves, who had been inspired by the 1966 World Cup. And he realized, as Bullets Cahill and others had known half a century before, that soccer would be a great way to fill baseball stadiums in the offseason, and the new Atlanta Fulton County Stadium needed to be filled.
So Cecil hired 33-year-old Welshman Phil Woosnam, who had played for West Ham and Aston Villa, to coach the team and occasionally play. What he discovered in Atlanta was a city with no soccer infrastructure. Everything that had been built before the Great Depression was gone. The Georgia State Soccer Association didn't exist. Only a few high schools had teams. Soccer had only been recognized as a boys' sport in 1965, and there was no youth soccer.
So in their first year, the Chiefs ran 390 clinics for over 20,000 kids and coaches in the region. And right before the Chiefs' first training camp in 1967, Woosnam told the Atlanta Constitution, quote, "I have no doubts that the game will be accepted here in Atlanta, the South, and the nation. I just wonder how long it will take for the people to respond to the game," unquote. I know we're a broken record on this, but all of the first chapter of Atlanta soccer history, almost 50 years, had been erased, completely forgotten.
But thanks to the Chiefs, within 2 years, there was rec and YMCA leagues in Cobb County, Fulton, Clayton, and DeKalb. And in 1968, when the Chiefs moved to the NASL, they brought the city its first national sports championship. In May 1968, the Chiefs also defeated English First Division champs Manchester City. That was 3-2 at Atlanta Stadium in front of the largest soccer crowd in the region at the time, over 23,000.
Kaiser Motang scored the winning goal in his first game for the Chiefs, and he ended up being the NASL Rookie of the Year. When the star forward returned to South Africa in 1970, he started his own team in Johannesburg, called it the Kaiser Chiefs, and it became the most successful team in the country.
And the name of an English indie rock band for middle-aged guys like us.
Now, 19 years after that Man City game, in May 1987, high school senior Leslie Suter, now a friend of mine, was named Cobb County Girls Player of the Year. But her school didn't even have a sanctioned girls soccer team until her sophomore year.
As we discussed in episode 5, ODP was the best pathway for young women. And Leslie played for Georgia's ODP team, which got her scouted for U19 camps, which is where she met Mia Hamm and the other 99ers. Unlike now, where there are national teams at many age groups, as well as a full national team, back then the only age breakouts were U19 and the senior team. So every good young player was gunning for 46 spots over 2 teams. And that was it.
These days, Atlanta is home to some of the top girls clubs in the country, like Top Hat and Concord Fire. And Fulton County's Roswell High School girls team finished undefeated and ranked number 1 in the country just last spring.
Broadly speaking, thanks to the Chiefs and Title IX and new waves of immigrants, the Atlanta area became a hotbed of youth soccer, which could produce national teamers like Kelly O'Hara from Fayetteville, Clint Mathis of Conyers, Josh Wolf from Gwinnett County, and Ricardo Clark from the south side of Atlanta.
Mexican and Caribbean migration to the area diversified the black and white split that had defined Atlanta soccer. Back in the 60s and 70s, Chiefs players were segregated as black players lived in southwest Atlanta while the white ones lived near Emory. So the sold-out crowds at Mercedes-Benz Stadium since 2017, cheering for Venezuelan stars like Joseph Martinez, along with homegrown players like Caleb Wiley, George Bello, and Ajani Fortune, are reflecting a truly united soccer culture. The various strands of a thriving soccer town still growing after 140 years.
No wonder U.S. Soccer broke ground on its new 200-acre National Training Center in Fayetteville last year. You can't tell the U.S. Soccer story without Atlanta.